Hi, everyone. Dr. Liz here. Welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast. I'm glad you're here, glad you're listening and learning, and hopefully it will help you with your journey along the way. I am a psychotherapist with a specialty in anxiety, insomnia, and deeper emotional healing. Hypnosis is one of the tools in my toolbox that I use to help people feel better and to help people be better. I do work all over the world. Please feel free to reach out and contact me if you would like some help. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my adult life, built an award-winning company, sold it, and then focused mainly on my private practice. That gives you a unique perspective, especially my ability to work with people in business at all kinds of levels. Before I go, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can go and subscribe to the newsletter. And you'll get free hypnosis downloads that you can listen to immediately. Another way is to buy one of the downloads that I have for sale. I only have a couple up there, but they're good ones. They've stood the test of time. I made the decision to not run ads during my podcast because I really do see it as an act of service. I completely respect people who do have ads on their podcast, but it's just not my path. All right, everyone, enjoy the episode. And I hope to see you back here soon. Hey everyone, Dr. Liz here. I forgot in the original recording to say that both of my girls have given me permission to talk about their autism and some of their mental health struggles on the podcast. Hey everyone, it's Dr. Liz here. I'm going to tell you some stories about my recent vacation and then tell you some stories about my early motherhood. What I would like for you to come away with from this episode is, what do you do when you feel guilty? What are some strategies you can use when you feel guilty about something? How do you move out of that guilt and not get trapped there and destroyed by it? So let's jump in. I really struggled about what to do the episode on this week. I actually have a whole spreadsheet where I keep an ideas list and just none of them resonated with me. And so I waited. I waited until I felt like I really have something to talk about, something that I feel like will help you and me. So often I record these podcasts to learn more for myself. Originally, that was to learn more of the research and communicate it about hypnosis. But then as the years went on, I'm in year 9 now, about to come up on year 10 of doing the podcast. I visited my oldest daughter in Asheville about 2 weeks ago. And it's almost a year to the date that Helene hit. I was there when Helene hit, unknowingly. I did not know a hurricane was coming when I flew in that night. I think I heard some announcement in the airport or something and thought, oh my God, I'm glad my flight isn't canceled. And another mom of one of her friends is coming whose flight was canceled because of the hurricane. Little did I know that I would be stuck without water, electricity, anything for days and days, my whole trip basically. So while I was there, I had this mini PTSD going on, just flashbacks of everything that happened last year. Nothing really major for me, but some anxiousness so that it didn't get bad this year, but it's still there. And then my oldest daughter told me 2 things while I was there. One, that she was diagnosed with autism level 1 when she was in Italy this summer. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know my youngest daughter, who's 19, was diagnosed with autism at 15 during COVID, when a lot of things came to a head for her. But I had honestly never considered it for my older daughter. She's 24. She graduated from Florida State University, working her way through with no student loans and with our support as well, her parents' support and college savings. and came close to graduating with a 4.0. She made 1B the entire time she was there. She moved to Asheville, made friends, got a job, all of this. So to look at her from the outside, you would say she's very high functioning. I knew she had struggled with anxiety and depression, actually, for many years and had tried different medications for it and also had seen therapists. But I really didn't see her as an autistic individual until she told me this. And I said, "What? No, you're not." Which is exactly what she predicted I would do. Okay. Not my best parenting moment. Like, really. And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." And she's like, "No, Mom, I went for a full evaluation in Italy." And I even said to her, "Is it just a little bit?" And she's like, "No, not a little bit, like solidly in the middle." And I was like, "Oh my God." So we talked about it. And of course, I immediately went into supporting her and asking what I could do to help support her. And she said to me, "This changes nothing. Nothing has changed. Like, I am the same exact person." And I was like, "Okay, I get that." And then she told me about some of her other mental health struggles that have been going on, some pretty severe depression. So after we have this discussion, I go back to my hotel room. I had a flood of guilt come up. And when I say a flood, I mean like Noah's Ark, okay? Like my whole world felt flooded with guilt. And thinking of everything I did wrong as a mother, even though I know intellectually, like autism is genetic. They have many theories of how autism develops, but the leading theory is really genetic. There's some also in utero theories, like some things happen in the uterine environment when the child is developing. But those actually have to do with some genetic differences in the mother that's carrying the fetus. So that's really genetic, right? Although they know like areas with higher pollution rates have higher rates of autism. Like there's some environmental things that happen too. And myself as a mother, it's like, oh, make sure I live by somewhere with not a lot of pollution, right? I didn't even know that at the time. That study was not published when I was pregnant. Okay. We do the best we can when we're pregnant. And then later we learn all this stuff. But I still had this wash of guilt come over me. I had severe postpartum depression when she was born, like a suicidal postpartum depression that I tried to get help for with a therapist who was a postpartum specialist and just honestly so nasty to me on the telephone that I ended up not seeing her and not getting help. And I was too depressed to reach out to someone else. Honestly, I try to return all my phone calls within 24 hours of someone leaving me a voicemail. It's pretty rare these days that someone leaves me a voicemail, but if they do, I always try to call them back within 24 hours and be as nice as I can be as well, because I know what it takes to reach out to someone when you're struggling. And that was a formative experience for me about how to behave in the future as a therapist returning calls. So that was my immediate thought is I caused this with my postpartum depression, even though I could not have prevented it in any shape or form. And the only way I could have prevented that postpartum depression is to be a different person. That's how I feel about it. If I was born a different person into a different family and raised a completely different way, maybe I wouldn't have had postpartum depression. I don't know. Even when you know the risk factors, which I didn't at the time, there's only so many that you can control. Moving is one of them. And a lot of people move when they're pregnant because they're preparing for the baby. They want to be closer to family, or they want a better job, or they want a better environment. And I had moved right after she was born. which contributed to that depression. And then for my second one, it didn't hit until she was about 9 months old, but it did hit because my husband at the time was going out to clubs and staying out late and traveling across the state to concerts and acting like he was, I don't know, 25 instead of 35 with 2 kids. Okay, so I couldn't control him in any shape or form. He was doing this during the pregnancy, when she was born. I remember Eva was only like 6 weeks old or something. You're exhausted at 6 weeks old. She was nursing all night long. I was getting hardly any sleep. And he goes out to some club, locks his keys in the car, and calls me to come pick him up at 4 a.m. And I have her. And then I have my older one, who was like 4.5 when she was born. And I'm supposed to wake up these 2 babies, basically, put them in the car and go pick him up from a club, which is what I did. Instead of just saying, figure it out yourself, call your mom, call your brother. I don't care who you call, but leave me to sleep. Which I think at the time, if I had been stronger, I would have said that. Uber did not exist. Uber was not an option, but taxis were. I call a taxi, but leave me be. So there were things leading up to it. It wasn't like a super happy year that led up to it. But then another event, big event happened that threw me into a severe postpartum depression, because it's defined up until about a year and a half after the baby is born. It's not just those first weeks. So this was my first thought. Like postpartum depression, okay, caused autism, which is like laughable when I think about it with my logical mind. Postpartum depression does not cause autism, you guys. Neither does Tylenol, okay? But this was my first thought, like, oh my God, this guilt wash as a mother. And we can have washes of guilt about all kinds of stuff as parents, not just mothers, as parents. But then I went looking. So I was really in the feelings and I was crying a lot. This was pretty devastating to me. More so the struggle she was having versus the autism. But it was like, wow, I have 2 autistic kids now. Okay, not just one, 2 of them. And they both struggle with depression, anxiety. And this child is really struggling. So that guilt wash came up immediately. And then grief came up for me. So just straight out sadness and grief that she was going through this, that she was feeling so bad that, I mean, I know what depression, severe depression feels like, and it's awful. And so I just felt so sad for her that she was going through that. And I think that's more where the guilt came in, like due to my history is why she's feeling that. Okay. I'd like to blame everything I can on my ex-husband, but on this one, I really didn't. It was like, okay, he has his own genetics. I think his genetics are more responsible for the autism, since it's like him, a brother, like several of them fit that criteria, let's say undiagnosed, right? And when I met him, he was having panic attacks. So he has some of those anxiety genes as well. But for some reason, I feel like the depression genes are my side. So I felt really guilty. This has gone on for a while. And then one day this week, I woke up and thought, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you're not responsible for all of this. And then I pulled up my DBT handouts, dialectical behavior therapy, which I loved, which helped me so much with emotional regulation. So much so that I actually got trained in it and use it in my practice all the time. And DBT has a worksheet on guilt and shame, but guilt specifically. Because when you're emotionally dysregulated, guilt fits into that. Sometimes you feel so guilty that it overwhelms you. And then you don't make really good decisions for yourself or for the people you love in your life. You can drop so far into guilt that you're not able to help them the way that perhaps they need to be helped. And then you feel guilty about that. Okay. Like there are circles and circles and circles of guilt that parents can get into, partners can get into, friends, individuals just sitting around. You can feel guilty about pretty much anything, depending on your history. So let's look at this handout. What DBT does is say, okay, let's see if this emotion fits the facts of a situation. Like, is what you're feeling appropriate? Because often with emotional dysregulation, it's not appropriate. Sometimes that's anger. Is it appropriate to be angry at something or someone? And it takes this like wise mind, adult self to say yes or no to that, which is very difficult to move into sometimes. So the DBT workbook actually tells you, hey, when we're in our right mind and highly researched, and this is what, all these intelligent people think fits the facts of a situation. For guilt is when your behavior violates your own values or moral code. Your own values or moral code. Now, this wasn't the only handout I looked at. I also pulled up my guilt versus shame handout when I took a whole seminar about it. I pulled up another worksheet that partners use in couples therapy, all this stuff. But most of them agree that guilt is a feeling of responsibility or remorse for some offense, crime, wrongdoing, whether real or imagined. So it could be imagined. Now, DBT, when we say, does it fit the facts of a situation, we want you to check in with the real so that you can come out of guilt, particularly if it's imagined, if it doesn't fit the facts of a situation. So guilt is based sometimes on a failure of doing, which is direct result of our behaviors and choices, or involves a violation of standards, like our own moral standards. Can be positive at time. It can motivate us for positive change. Like when we do something wrong, we feel guilty about it. We change our behavior so we don't make the same mistake or negative choice again. But all of the worksheets agree it is based on values, morals, and standards. And also, it's quite normal to feel guilt on occasion because we all make mistakes. We're learning as we go. So keep that in mind. So first we look at the origins of it. Where is it coming from? Did it violate a standard? Does it fit the facts of a situation? This is not as simple as it seems. For me, I wanted to be such a good mom. I really believed if I do attachment parenting and co-sleeping and breastfeeding and I stay home with my kids, then they're going to grow up and feel happy. That's basically it. If I have to boil it down to one sentence, they're going to grow up and feel happy because I'm a good mom, because I'm doing everything that I need to do to help them feel good about themselves, to have high self-esteem, to feel effective in the world. These are all my parenting goals. And I felt like they were possible. I had a PhD in clinical psychology with a specialty in children and families. That was my specialty when I graduated, children and families. I knew how to be a good mom. I knew what that looked like. And I don't think people who use formula are bad moms. Let me just say that really clearly here, okay? We all have our limitations on what we can do and manage and tolerate and all this stuff as parents. So that wasn't really it. It was more the emotional piece for me. I'm present to them. I teach them good skills. I listen to them. I validate their feelings. I didn't spank because it was out of fashion. I have no idea if it's in fashion now. I think the research is pretty clear on spanking. It's not great for our kids. But it was very different from how I was brought up. I was brought up with a lot of guilt and shame, often religious-based. My dad was a Methodist minister, very kind man, but we really don't get into Christianity without guilt involved, okay? And sometimes shame, too. My mother was narcissistic, so if you didn't make her happy, you paid for it with guilt and shame, for sure. both of those. So this was an integral part of my upbringing, and I did not want to do that to my children. And I didn't do it to my children. So I had all these ideas. And so we think about that and we do the best we can. And then down the road, when stuff like this happens, that's where I immediately go to. Did my behavior violate my own values or moral code? Not by my own choice. I really didn't. There's no way I could have controlled postpartum depression, which is perhaps a factor in the depression and anxiety in their adult years. Should I feel guilty for the genetics leading to autism? I mean, I could, but those I don't control either. That's not violating my values or moral code. Those are uncontrollable factors to me. Okay, so now that we know the background, what do we do about it? That's what really people want to know. What do I do about guilt? Well, first I realized part of what was going on for me was grief and not guilt. So we are going to talk about guilt here, but it's like once I made that shift in my mind, like, oh, grief and sadness. And this is not the first time I've cried about my girls being depressed or anxious, or both of them have OCD, like all kinds of stuff. Okay. Many tears through the years. Many tears through the years. I feel like I should sing that, right? But again, this was a new wash of it. And I realized like, oh, I have some gremlins going here. Okay. Gremlins are those unhelpful reactions. So I definitely had some blame, self-blame, some frustration. It's hard to accept this reality now. Some despondency or helplessness, feelings of helplessness, like there's nothing I can do about this. I can't go back and change the clock on time. I cannot have been a different mother than I was. Feelings of stupidity, that's a gremlin that comes up from our subconscious. Like I shouldn't make mistakes. That's feelings of stupidity. Like I'm such an idiot and I made all these mistakes, all of that. That didn't come up so much for me as grief. Grief can come from a change in self-identity. So this was a change in identity for me. I'm not a mom of one autistic adult. I'm a mom of two autistic adults, okay? And it was just a jump for me. Like I have this extremely high-functioning kid who deals with significant depression still. And then one that's on her way, living at home, taking some college classes, but did not do that straight path of going to college and staying there and doing well. No, she came home last year suicidal. She had to come home. She wasn't holding her weight. Also, she was had some significant health stuff going on that was recently identified through the Mayo Clinic. But it's like, all right, I had that and I made those adjustments. And then it was another adjustment to make here for me in terms of identity. Now, let's talk about what would be helpful, like helpful autopilots we talk about on this podcast. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the ones about your chimp versus your human. I have a whole series on it. And we say, okay, helpful autopilots are those thoughts that pop up that help us along the way, that help us not get stuck in the feelings. The feelings are okay. The chimp is going to come up and throw feelings at us, so that we do something different, so that we do change something. And then the helpful autopilots come up as part of our human, part of our wise mind is what DBT would say. So the antidote to frustration is acceptance. Let's start sorting this out. Let's adjust. There's a radical acceptance for me that I had to do of, okay, I cannot change the past. I cannot go back and parent any different way than I did, no matter how it affected them. I can't change my genetics. I can't change the person I married who made these children with me and his genetics. That's acceptance. Antidote to helplessness is patience. Time will move things along. There's actions that I can take here. There's ways to help myself feel better. despondency, that feeling of it's all too much. The actual helpful autopilot to that is resignation. My starting point is where I am. That's actual radical acceptance to me. Dr. Peters doesn't put it that way in his book, The Path Through the Jungle. That's what I'm referring to with the chimp versus human. But I would say that's also acceptance. My starting point is where I am, and how do I move forward from here? And then feelings of stupidity, meaning like I shouldn't make mistakes, is a positive approach. Let me be proactive and find some solutions. And in terms of grief, the helpful autopilot there is my feelings are okay. All of my feelings are okay. It's what I do with them that's important. Some of them can just simply pass. Tears eventually stop and they pass. Actions eventually occur to me, almost always. And that may be as small as like, all right, time to get up out of bed and feed the animals. And I need to make sure I take a walk in the sun today. To bigger ones, like, all right, time to get to work. I have clients today. Shower, put those professional clothes on and show up as the best therapist I can be with everything that I know. And I continue to learn. All the way opposite action for guilt in terms of the DBT system is validate yourself. Don't apologize or try to make up for perceived transgressions. Just take in the information and validate yourself. All of your feelings are okay. You can seek forgiveness if that's appropriate. Let's say you did something to someone that violated your values. You can seek forgiveness. You can repair the harm. It's amends in the 12-step system, but you don't have to be in 12-step to make amends. Ask for forgiveness, apologize, make something better, accept the consequences gracefully, commit to avoiding behaviors that violate your moral values in the future. So we commit to being different in the world. Let's say you have a problem with lying and you've decided, I'm going to be honest no matter what. Because lying becomes a habit and people do it out of stupidity sometimes, right? Like someone who has a real lying habit or is a pathological liar will lie about stuff that to everybody else looks absolutely ridiculous. Like, dude, there is no reason to lie about that. Okay, just tell the truth. So that would be like, okay, I'm going to commit to telling the truth instead of lying because now I feel guilty lying. Pathological liars often don't feel guilty. I think sometimes people who have a habit of lying will feel guilty, and then often something will happen to change that way of life. When you're talking about affair recovery and someone has lied to hide the affair and it's discovered, honesty is the first commitment that that person has to make to remain in the relationship. If the other person wants to remain in the relationship, it takes time to build back that trust, but it's based on honesty in the smallest ways and in the largest ways. Smallest ways meaning, let's say they're on their way home and they want to stop off and get some fast food or something, but instead they say, I have to stay a little bit late at work. No, just say, yeah, I want to stop by and get some fast food on the way home. I know you don't agree with that. I know you think it's bad for my health, but my commitment is to honesty here. Okay, so that would be like a smaller action right there versus a larger one, obviously, would be opening the phone, email accounts, all that stuff that you do during affair recovery. You can also check in with judgments that you're making on yourself. So that's checking in with the guilt. Like, why am I feeling guilty here? Let me see if it fits the facts like we were talking about. And if it doesn't, then what's the feeling that I really need to address here? Which for me was some grief for my daughters struggling with this, some grief for my own parenting that was limited by postpartum depression or depression years later, or some out of control behavior years later, before I really became regulated, before I really became committed to emotional regulation and being an even better parent. But I can't wind back the clock on their early childhoods. So one of the major recommendations for guilt or shame also, but let's stick with guilt here, is learn to forgive yourself. Do you judge yourself too harshly? And practicing forgiving others actually helps you learn to empathize and forgive yourself. When I made living amends in one of the 12-step programs I was in, I volunteered in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit at the Children's Hospital by my house, for a year. And that was one way to make amends to my children for some of their early childhood where I was depressed and I did feel unregulated and I didn't feel like emotionally I was the best mom. So I made amends in that way. And then living amends is when you're moving forward and living in a different way and responding in a different way. But sometimes when I start to feel guilty about that early childhood, I think about that year in the NICU where I held babies. That's what I did. I was a baby holder because babies need to be held. They're in the hospital, right? Hooked up to machines and all kinds of stuff. They're not having that holding environment that new babies need that aren't in the NICU. You go home and you hold the baby all the time. The baby cries, you hold the baby. Right? The baby poops, you change the baby, then you hold the baby. The baby smiles, you hold the baby, like all kinds of stuff. So that was my amends. So that is also an option. If you're truly remorseful over something you've done wrong in the past, you can't change it. You make amends and then forgive yourself moving forward. So that's what I'm working on as I navigate this. And I hope that you are forgiving with yourself, you're gentle with yourself, you're compassionate with yourself as much as you can be. It's really difficult. It's not an easy task. But it is developing that kinder internal voice to be the counterpart to that inner critic that comes up and says, oh my God, you should have been a much better mother and none of this would happen. Your kids would be completely fine, right? They would be the stars of the show, which we know it's not all parenting that influences them, right? Like social media, so clear, has actually a huge influence over parenting these days. Their school relationships, whether they get bullied at school, whether they feel like they have friends or it's hard for them to make friends, all of those are factors in what happens in their mental health environment for them. So those are also good reminders to help me not feel guilty. So those are also good reminders that I turn to when the guilt starts to creep up. It's like, wait a minute, I am not the only influence and factor here. And then of course, it's always easy to think about their dad, right? The ex-husband, he has some responsibility here too. That's an easy place for me to go. But that doesn't tell the full story. It doesn't often solve my guilt. It's that self-compassion and forgiveness. And for me, spirituality too. It's a spiritual journey for me of these children were meant to be born to me. Maybe because I do know so much about this and I'm continuing to learn. I just attended a seminar last night about trauma and autism and how due to the sensitive nervous system, the sensory overload that happens, a lot of things are considered traumatic to them that to the rest of us, it would not be. So sometimes change in routine or a very overstimulating environment is processed as trauma for them. So my point there is we continue to learn and change and grow. And perhaps that's one of the reasons they were born to me, is that I am willing to continue to do that. And as I do that, I let go of that old identity and the identity shifts, but the grief of that old identity shifts as well. I'm able to let it go more and more. All right, we're going to wrap up here. I hope this helped you with grief. Guilt. Right? I hope this helped you with guilt and grief. They often go together. And I hope you are healthy and safe. Peace. I hope you truly enjoyed today's episode. Remember that you can get free hypnosis downloads over at my website, drlizhypnosis.com, DRLIZ hypnosis.com. I work all over the world doing hypnosis. So if you're interested in working with me, please schedule a free consultation over at my website, and we'll see what your goals are and if I can be of service to you in helping you reach them. Finally, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast or tell a friend. That way, more and more people learn about the power of hypnosis. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. Peace. This podcast is not mental health treatment, nor should it replace mental health treatment. If you need therapy or hypnotherapy, please seek treatment from a trained professional.